Hello, everybody. As you can hear, probably, we're live from downtown Los Angeles. I'm Young Brando, your host, and we're going to have some great watch talk again today. We are going to continue to preview Phillips Hong Kong auctions, this time their main line, their main auction, which is going to take place over this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. They have some 210 lots, I think, and we will get to a lot of them over the next 2 hours. And there is a super chat goal, as you can see. So if you want me to do a 4-hour show, twice as long, pause, feel free to contribute. Those are going to be 10 super chats of $5 or more over the next 2 hours. Obviously, any contribution is welcome. Any type of question related to watches, for the most part, is also welcome. Maybe even more, who knows? But let's start slowly but surely with some of the posts that I've made on Instagram. You guys know that I like warming up with that. Both because there's lots of overlap with everything that we talk about here, but also because it's good to get the gears moving before we talk about more serious stuff, detailed stuff about the auction market, about some of the interesting watches that they certainly have. And let's start here. Martin Scorsese was 82 years old earlier this week. And he is, as you guys know, an ambassador, so to speak, for Rolex. And that has been a long-standing relationship. And you see him wearing all kinds of different Rolexes from his own collection. More recently, he perhaps hasn't given up on his Submariner just yet, but you see him now that he has stepped into the next decade of his life with day dates. And I guess that seems incredibly appropriate, of course, to his stately stature in filmmaking. This doesn't happen very often, but he has been photographed with a different kind of watch, a Ralph Lauren piece that I caught a glimpse on what seems like a very candid shot. And that's a watch from Ralph Lauren's automotive collection. It is a chronometer. It's a COSC certified movement in stainless steel in an oversized 45 millimeter case. And what distinguishes a lot of watches from this collection is that they have a wooden detail, whether it's part of the dial or sometimes, in fact, a wooden bezel that speaks back, that recalls, that harks back to some of the cars in Ralph Lauren's own vintage collection. And this apparently is a watch inspired by the wooden dashboard of a 1938 Bugatti Type 57 SC that Ralph Lauren himself owns. And that's certainly evident in the wooden detail, but also the Arabic numerals and the kind of hands and seconds track that is used right in the middle that gives the watch that automotive air. C3D now, nice to see you in the chat. So that was something interesting, and you can see how clearly oversized it is. This watch also comes with a 39 millimeter case as well. Obviously, at retail, it's absolute poison. You'll lose probably, I don't want to exaggerate, but more than half the value the minute you make a purchase like that. With a Ralph Lauren watch, about the only way to go is the secondary market. And there, in fact, you can get some incredible deals. So if you are into the design, if you like the style for whatever reason, it's great to hunt for these watches on the secondary market. I know a couple of people in the community who like them a lot and who actually own a couple of them, if not a handful. This is a crystalor or crystalor that you don't see every day. It's one of those outrageous Cartier designs that perhaps are more affectatious than artful. I have to say it is the height of hubris to frame what is essentially a rather plain white Cartier dial as if it were a work of art, as if it were a beautiful painting, but that's exactly what they have done. And there are not many brands in horology that could possibly get away with this. And Cartier certainly tops that list. I think it's actually kind of a cool looking watch. I'm, I'm not enamored by it, but it certainly tickles my fancy a little bit. Actually, on this same trip to the Keystone, I fell in love with a particular watch, and I finally decided to post it just so someone else buys it and saves me from making a stupid decision who moves me one step further away from getting my Royal Oak Jumbo. But anyway, I'm going to post that watch soon enough as well. It's an AP. It's a non-Royal Oak AP, and it kind of falls within this genre. I won't spoil it any further. You'll see it when the next post drops on my Instagram account, which is at young.brando. So please feel free to follow me on Instagram as well. I'm hoping, by the way, that you hear me clearly. I'm wearing a hoodie, which is not something that I usually do on live streams, and I clip the microphone wherever I could actually fix it. So hopefully that works. This was, for me, an interesting find because I have seen over time Luca Cordero de Montezemolo from the archives, with his Rolexes, whether that is his GMT Master, which had been a mainstay, especially for the elder Montezemolo. I have also seen him with Polar Explorer 2 from the 5-digit era. I have seen him with an Omega watch that I will also post in the next few days, so stay tuned for that. But I had never seen a photo where he identifiably wore another brand. Obviously, I have myself posted a picture of his with an AP, which we will see in a little bit. But this is from 1974, when he was basically Enzo Ferrari's assistant and the manager of Scuderia Ferrari, which is, of course, a role that he held in different ways through the decades. But this was around the time where they were working with Niki Lauda, who was going to win the title and become the first Ferrari-powered champion in about 11 years. And that would happen in 1975. But I believe this picture is taken at the Nürburgring at the Germany GP in 1974. Of course, that's a time where automatic chronographs are all the rage. And Hoya was obviously one of the pioneers of disseminating self-winding chronographs. In fact, they had made a point of switching the position of the crown just to signify that transformation or that transition from hand-wound calibers to self-winding calibers. And this Autavia that Luca is wearing is one of those early, so to speak, automatic chronographs in a tonneau-shaped case. Autavia, the name, brings together automotive and aviation, which are, of course, two main realms where the chronograph came handy as a kind of tool watch at the time. And it's really a beautiful piece, whether you're wearing it on this sort of rally racing style strap, or perhaps on a matching bracelet even. But it's a beautiful, beautiful watch. And it has a very strong automotive, racing, motorsports provenance as well, which Hoya as a brand, of course, has had for decades, and that they are about to reclaim, perhaps in a major way, by their ownership group stepping in to sponsor Formula One starting next year. LVMH obviously is that ownership group, Louis Vuitton or Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton, and it's going to be an interesting era to observe, precisely because it's not simply Tag Heuer replacing Rolex as the timekeeping sponsor or as the main sponsor, but an entire conglomerate which can provide all kinds of different services, from the trunks to hospitality to obviously alcoholic drinks, just about anything. So it's going to be something I think we will discover in real time once the new season begins. This one has not yet ended, but I think it's almost inevitable, pardon me, that Max Verstappen actually probably seals the driver's title in Vegas, which I'm not really looking forward to. I was really hoping that Ferrari would give it a run. That, you know, we were already sure that wasn't going to happen. McLaren, obviously, with both its drivers, was kind of, you know, making a claim to that driver's spot, and they're probably going to take the Constructors' Championship, but I guess it's Verstappen yet again. We will see if anything changes next year, and certainly with 2026, where the regulations are being overhauled in a major way. This was from Watch Time New York, all the way back from almost a month ago now. It's a monster of a watch. It's one of the Greubel Forsey pieces that came out as their 8th fundamental invention, the tourbillon cardan. Cardan refers to the gimbal-like construction of the tourbillon cage. This is a multi-axis tourbillon, reminiscent, you might say, of Gégé Lecoutre's creations, perhaps. That would be the closest equivalent to it in terms of the gyro tourbillon. But this is truly a very interesting adaptation for the regulating mechanism for a wristwatch. Of course, that has been Greubel Forsey's claim to fame. That has been part of their distinction since they have introduced their first watch. Thank you, Offrey. Thank you, Ryan Offrey. I really appreciate you. The first watch they introduced was, of course, was using not one but two tourbillons inclined at 30 degrees, which was their way of translating the tourbillon also in terms of its functionality for a watch worn on the wrist, rather than something that simply originated with the pocket watch and patented by Breguet in the 19th century. The tourbillon cardan also is Grebel Forcé's fastest tourbillon, 16 seconds for a complete revolution, which, of course, since it moves through more positions in less time, is, on paper at least, chronometrically more precise. It is also guided by those two mobile rings, that gimbal-like construction that we were just talking about, which tilt backwards and forwards in about 48 seconds. And since the tilt of those rings is also controlled within plus and minus 30 degrees, the degree of inclination for the tourbillon never varies, which obviously optimizes the chronometric performance of the watch. The watch is rendered in titanium, as is the tourbillon cage, and it is powered by a quadruple barrel movement, 4 barrels coaxially mounted, that deliver a power reserve of 80 hours, meaning more than 3 days at chronometer precision, and in fact more. The watch still performs beyond that, although the chronometric precision is only guaranteed up to 80 hours. And it has, as you can see, a very large balance wheel to begin with, and it's really beautiful to see that 16-second revolution in real time at a relatively slow beat rate, right? 21,600 oscillations per hour, which corresponds to 3 hertz. This was amazing. It was also amazing, by the way, because I had a chance to virtually meet Stephen Forsey just a couple of weeks after I encountered this watch in person in New York. I had a chance to jump on a video call, much thanks to the masterclass by the Collectors Room, which is the initiative that I've been working with and that Gary Getz is heading. And he was wearing this very watch, this tourbillon cardan, on his wrist, and it was really amazing to see that the master himself chose this particular watch, which is, of course, not only $400,000 away from me, but also, as you can see, a significant growth of my wrist as well. But it looks cool nonetheless, right? It's the kind of watch that you don't necessarily have to have a big wrist to wear. If you have that kind of money, and if you buy a watch like this, you can wear it however you want, wherever you want, with whatever kind of wrist you have. Speaking of that, let's skip over to the most recent post, since we were already talking about Grebel Forcé. After months of speculation, Pep Guardiola just signed a new contract with Manchester City. It's apparently a 2-year extension, 1+1, which will help him complete at least a whole decade with this project, with the Manchester City that he has been so successful with, having now won, I think, 6 titles from the last 7, certainly 4 titles back-to-back, and a Champions League title, which, of course, was previously unseen in the club's history, and his first, in fact, after his years in Barcelona. And he was signing the contract with a watch that he doesn't seem to take off his wrist since this summer. And it's the Grebel Forcé Balancier, the Ether. And this is a piece that the brand introduced in 2021 to celebrate the United Arab Emirates' 50th anniversary in collaboration with Siddiqui and Sons. It was a 5-piece exclusive run. It was the first time they made a fully carbon-cased watch. So even though this watch was exclusive and a very limited edition, it did influence some of the direction of the Balancier series, where you now have, for example, variations of the Balancier Convex S2, which is housed in a smaller carbon case and has a lot of the aesthetic aspects, a lot of the visual appeal of this watch that Guardiola seems to love so much. This special edition was kind of embellished with turquoise details, which is a color as Yas Marina blue that Siddiqui and Sons has used in their limited editions very extensively. And this is how it looks from a closer perspective. Of course, with an inclined balance wheel, which preserves the brand's aesthetic. Last but not least, we are back to Luca Cordero di Montezemolo. And this is the picture I was talking about, where he wears what clearly looks like a 5402 ST, meaning the original Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Jumbo in stainless steel. You can tell it from a number of things, but most certainly from the darker shade of the dial and from the white of the date window, which, of course, in subsequent iterations of the Jumbo, for purposes of aesthetic cohesion, AP matches with the dial color. Montezemolo is a former chairman of Ferrari and Fiat, and he was at one point Gianni Agnelli's protege, so he was taught by the best, so to speak, when it comes to matters of style. And here he keeps things very simple and elegant with a classic pinstripe suit, crisp white shirt, and maybe bold-ish tie with the shade of the blue and the size of the dots he has chosen, perhaps, but nothing outrageous, most certainly. Nice pocket linen peeking through, and a very sleek and elegant piece that, of course, has aspects, very important aspects at that of brutalist design, but Royal Oak, of course, especially in its original iteration, and still to a large extent as the Jumbo, very sleek and elegant watch that has many elements that it takes after AP's previous reputation in making ultra-thin dress watches. And the dial color somehow matches the suit's color so well that I thought, we should not simply call it navy, but Bleu Nuit Nuage 50, the cloudy midnight sky or cloudy night sky blue, which was the particular shade with the tapisserie decoration that Gérard Janta chose from the Sternfrère catalog when he was completing the design. All right, now that we are done with the Instagram recap, we can start in earnest with discussing the Phillips Hong Kong auction number 19, watch auction number 19. Everyone knows the rules. I dropped the link in the chat. So if you have any special requests, if you want to direct my attention to any particular lot, feel free to send in a super chat. We do have the super chat goal, 10 super chats of $5 or more, which will extend this broadcast all the way into the night. I'm planning to do a 2-hour stream, which means I have another hour and a half, which should be plenty. But if you want me to go on for 4 hours or more, that's what we need. In either case, any contribution is welcome. But remember, for it to count towards the goal, it has to be a super chat and not a sticker, and it has to be for an amount of $4.99 or more. Let's start with something nice and easy. One of my favorite complications in horology, which AP was on the vanguard of adopting in the realm of wristwatches. This is the wandering hours complication, and AP famously calls their implementation the star wheel, because it uses those, for the hour indicator, those revolving transparent discs that expose under them the mechanism that looks, the wheel, so to speak, that looks like a star. This is a classic round case with a stepped bezel and rather stubby lugs. At 36 millimeters, it wears very elegantly and relatively thin as well. I have posted a wrist roll of this exact reference with a slightly different design on the dial, just a couple of weeks back, I want to say. There we are. So that's how it looks on the wrist. This has a floral decoration and engraving in that upward facing crescent in the lower half of the dial. Whereas the more common, and I have to say, more subtle and elegant version of it has this classic Clou de Paris hobnail guilloche decoration, very fine and beautiful in the way it matches here the yellow gold case of the watch. The reference is 25720 BA for yellow gold. Incredibly legible in terms of how that fan-like scale in kind of like a cream off-white color provides a beautiful backdrop to the transparent hour wheel. Really, what you have overall is one of the most appealing neo-vintage watches, and one of the great values still when it comes to both Audemars Piguet pieces writ large, and there is a lot of value still to be found in AP when you venture beyond the Royal Oak. And also just compared to whatever they have on offer in terms of star wheel today, the Code 1159, which is an absolutely, yeah, it's like an absolute dog's breakfast of a design, let's put it like that. And it is also, I think, way too large for a complication that's supposed to be very classical and elegant, and it's much less legible than this for all its size. The estimated value of lots 822, which is an AP star wheel, reference 25720BA, which comes with a fitted presentation pouch, outer packaging, instruction manual, as well as a service invoice from AP, is set in the range between 15,400 to 25,600 in US dollars. Very good condition and a great piece there. Let's jump to lot 824. I remember my friend Brody had asked previously for me to provide some content or some discussion of the Hommage series of watches by Roger Dubuis. The Hommage line, of course, is far away from the concern of today's Roger Dubuis brand that since it has been taken over from Richemont, moved into this realm that they call hyper horology. A lot of skeletonized dials, outrageous presentations. I mean, it's very out there. The horological heritage is still there if you know where to look and where to if you know how to recognize it. But overall, unfortunately, the brand has become something else, and in many ways unrecognizable to anyone who appreciated Roger Dubuis' earlier work. And Roger Dubuis' earlier work was very much out Patecking Patek. It's an awkward phrase, but I can, I guess, compare it to something like Jeff Beck on a Roger Waters album, right? It's when he does a solo, for example, the solo in Three Wishes, it's a better imitation of David Gilmour than David Gilmour can himself render live or in studio. That's what early Roger Dubuis is to Patek Philippe. It's Genevan watchmaking at its best, in a way that perhaps has not been preserved and protected by some of the best of established Genevan watchmakers. And this particular chronograph and the Hommage series at large, since they have that classical round case presentation, is perhaps the best instance of this particular approach. You can even see it, of course, in the picture you have here. You know, the watch comes with an extra case back, a certificate of origin for the watch movement, which is, of course, certified according to the highest standards expected from a watch that carries that seal of the Geneva Canton. And it is a watch that aspires to be modern, or rather contemporary recreation of the 1463, the Tasti Tondi classic hand-wound Patek chronograph with those round pushers with conical guilloche decorated tops. So you have a classic 2-register hand-wound chronograph with Breguet numerals, here rendered in a 40 millimeter white gold case. This is the Hommage H40, so that's for the 40 millimeter case. And apparently this particular piece is number 2 of a limited edition of 28 pieces. It builds, in this case, on the Lemania 2310 base. Of course, finished, assembled, and regulated according to the standards that aspire to that Geneva seal, which it holds on its balance bridge. Look at that beautiful cap on the column wheel as well. Those are the kinds of details that I mean when I talk about Patekking Patek. That's what early Roger Dubuis does. And obviously, this particular movement base was used around the same time by Patek itself for the 5070, which is a very different watch and a much bigger and much more modern watch than this homage chronograph. And I don't say it as a compliment. This is lot 824 for Roger Dubuis homage chronograph in white gold, 40 millimeter case. Holds the Geneva seal, holds also as observatory level chronometric precision that is certified by the Besançon Observatory in France. And it seems to be in an excellently preserved condition with an estimated value that is set in the range between 19,200 to 38,500 in US dollars. Speaking of chronographs that build on that Lemania base, I would be remiss to not talk about Breguet. Breguet, of course, was revived in modern time under the master watchmaker, under the leadership, we should say, of Daniel Roth, who is one of the most storied names among living watchmakers today, and certainly one of those that deserve a lot of credit, not only for the revival, for the modern revival of Breguet long before the Swatch Group ownership, but also for, in fact, jump-starting independent watchmaking in our time. And of course, a lot of the movement development as part of this revival, when the Chaumet brothers were financing the company, when François Baudet was the CEO, and when Daniel Roth was at the helm as a master watchmaker, was in collaboration with Lemania. With, by the way, Breguet today sits on the Lemania manufacture that has become their home in our day. This is a piece from the mid-90s. So, in fact, it doesn't necessarily come from an early period, but the chronograph reference 3237, as well as, of course, 3230, are designs that were bequeathed to them by Daniel Roth. 3237 specifically has an exhibition caseback, as this model does, but this is also a relatively rare, well, perhaps in fact quite a rare example of such chronographs, which have for the hour track, a semi-precious stone ring. I have seen some onyx examples before. I've seen lapis lazuli examples too, and this is one of those, matching it with a yellow gold case that is 36 millimeters in diameter, compared to the AP star wheel that we were looking at from the previous lot, the 25720 reference. This is a watch that wears a little larger with those extended Breguet lugs, so it has a little more of a wrist presence. This particular case, of course, over the years has developed some patina, which might to some look unseemly, but I think in my case it just adds some warmth. And since the dial itself is hand guilloché on a gold base, that itself has taken kind of champagne-like tint, which matches really well with the rest of the case. A hobnail decoration at the center of the dial and a wave-like decoration for the chronograph registers, of which you have a 30-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock and running seconds at 9 o'clock. Of course, those heat-blued Breguet hands are absolutely essential for this style. There's also a centrally deployed chronograph seconds hand that is tempered blue in the same way. And as you can see, this piece comes with its certificate of origin, seemingly bought from Cyprus originally. Excuse my Greek, I don't read it all that well. And here is Breguet's iteration of the CH27 or Lemania 2310. That's Y-shaped chronograph bridge and the swan neck regulator, as you can see on the balance bridge. The column wheel in this case is exposed, which is a style I actually prefer, even though the Geneva style cap, the Genevan cap, is also quite impressive in its polish. Lot 823, which is a very rare iteration of a Breguet hand-wound chronograph, building on that storied Lemania base. It has everything that makes Breguet watches so special in terms of that classic case with the fluted decoration on the case, great patina on the case and on the dial as well, which adds a lot of warmth. But the unique thing that separates this watch from an otherwise similar example of a reference 3230 or 3237 is the hour ring, which is in lapis lazuli stone. Last time this kind of watch was sold on public auction, last year in November, so exactly a year ago almost, it's fetched an amount close to $150,000, maybe a little more, as far as I can remember. So I'm sure this piece that is very attractive and comes with its full set of box and papers could also fetch some interesting value. Right, this was an interesting start to the discussion. I think there are other pieces that probably require our attention as well, especially seeing how well the Toki auction for Phillips Hong Kong has performed. That was something I previewed in two parts, and an auction that had a very specific focus on the Japanese culture of collecting and the prices they have achieved. The sales they have made has been very impressive. We have observed a similar performance to what has transpired in Geneva. I don't expect this kind of enthusiasm or buying spree to carry itself to the next year, if at all, and or have a huge effect on the market more broadly. At this level, at this segment of the market, there's always a lot of movement. There are always new records being broken. And generally, Phillips has a way of curating their auctions in such a way that everything will sell, and also that pieces that may be less attractive in other settings and perhaps slip through the cracks in another auction catalog are very strategically placed, very attractively estimated, conservatively estimated, and they always seem to, for that reason, perform really well once they come under the hammer. But even then, I think it will be very interesting to observe how an FP Jaune chronomètre bleu will perform in this auction season, especially since after Geneva, the Hong Kong season has also started off really well for Phillips specifically, but also for auction houses in general when it comes to watches. So let's take a look at this lot. This has become a modern classic, of course, and it's one of the watches that aided, that facilitated Jean's ascendance into the mainstream recognition, as it were. It was supposed to be their youthful entry-level piece, a dress watch that's 39 millimeters in diameter, as opposed to the 40 millimeter case, either in platinum or pink gold for the chronomètre Souverain, which still serves as a reliable entry point into the brand. It used what was seemingly a novel material in tantalum for the case, which has this gunmetal gray sheen to it, and is greatly complemented by that ink blue or chrome blue dial, which is chameleon like. And it has, in fact, a much more simplified dial compared to the chronomètre Souverain as well, because it actually does away with the power reserve indicator as well, just has that small seconds subdial at 730. This is not only a full set, but also comes with some extra crocodile straps, apparently originally bought from Hourglass Bangkok on December 13th, 2019. Has the hand-wound manual caliber 1304 by FP Jaune. that is, of course, rendered in this model specifically in 18 karat gold. And of course, across the line since 2004 onwards. Hence, the particular importance placed on earlier brass movement, rhodium-plated brass movement pieces due to their rarity for the most part. I think the architecture of the movement is quite beautiful, even if it might not necessarily have the most masterful finishing that we came to identify with a lot of independence in our time. And I think, honestly, the orange strap doesn't look too bad. I would have never expected that kind of presentation, but I guess Phillips is feeling confident enough with the condition and overall appeal of this watch that they wanted to take a little bit of a risk when they photographed this particular one. Again, the piece comes with a relatively conservative estimate, at least at the lower end, 38,500 to 76,900 in US dollars. I expect this watch to probably end up somewhere near the ceiling, if not a little bit above. And you guys know, with all the with the buyer's premium and with other dues and taxes that is involved in these kinds of purchases at auction, that will actually bring it slightly over, if not way over, the current trends in the markets. But it would be an interesting one to see and discover in terms of where it will land. Lot 809. Perhaps continuing on the same genre, and this might be also the reason why Phillips chose an orange croc strap to present lot 809, the chronomètre bleu. We have a Titanite 48 millimeter FP jaune élégante. The élégante, perhaps after chronomètre bleu, is still the most popular, I think, watch that people ask for when they first step into an FP jaune boutique. It is their particular implementation of a quartz-powered watch. In its original version, in a 40 millimeter case, lug to lug, it was actually kind of a feminine version, or a female, or a watch that FP jaune came up with for a female customer. However, in the oversized version, it has achieved this sort of unisex, if not universal, desirability. And honestly, it has kind of a McLaren appeal, if you ask me, with this orange rubber strap. And if you know, you know. This piece is a like new example. And even though it's not, again, an absolutely novel thing, one of the appeals of the Elegant in terms of a quartz-powered watch, its ability to put itself, you might say, in hibernation, meaning that it has small motion detector, right, which wakes up the watch again, and that's what you see at 4 o'clock. because the watch falls to sleep after about 35 minutes of inactivity when you put it down, to in fact save battery life. And I believe it should be about 8 years, which is significantly above the average for a quartz-powered watch. And another interesting thing is that that white dial itself, in fact, is made with superluminova, so it glows in its entirety in this kind of blue shades in this particular case. The estimated value of this watch is set in the range of between 25,000 to 51,300 in US dollars for lot 810 for a 48 millimeter Titanite FB Jaune Elegant. There are so many interesting examples of the Nautilus, or variations, I should say. I'll start with 813, which is a Patek Philippe Nautilus flyback chronograph. This is the 5980 line 1A, of course, since it's in stainless steel. Blue dial. It's single sealed, so as it left the manufacturer in 2009, of course, this reference was launched itself alongside the 5711 in 2006 to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Nautilus. It's featured the first self-winding chronograph movement that Patek developed in-house, and it was the first Nautilus to feature a chronograph complication. And perhaps the ingenuity of the this particular flyback chronograph is that kind of bullseye counter where you have a single chronograph register which unclutters the dial, where you have at the very center a 12-hour counter and then a full 60-minute counter which has 0 to 30 minutes on the outermost circle inscribed in blue, and then 30 to 60 minutes in the circle that wraps itself around the hour counter in red. This would be another piece, again, arrived single sealed, meaning in the way it left the Patek manufacturer, time capsule, so to speak, from way back when. And the stainless steel versions of this reference were discontinued, of course, more than a decade ago now, I think. So this should be a very appealing piece. It has a pre-auction estimate that is set between 70,500 to 103,000 in US dollars. Please hit the like button. By the way, I think that's a great way of showing support. And of course, it costs absolutely nothing, but it returns some sort of value to the kind of work I put in here. And I always appreciate your support. I have said before about these kinds of versions of the Nautilus that they are almost like what the offshore series is to the Royal Oak Jumbo. 5990, even more so than 5980, represents that. It is a much more butch and hefty version of what is otherwise a very sleek and almost feminine design. Lot 814 is an example of a dual time self-winding chronograph version with flyback functionality of the Nautilus. This particular piece is in stainless steel with that gunmetal gray dial with the classic grooved decoration. And in so many ways, again, beyond also combining the dual time or travel time complication and a self-winding chronograph with the added flyback functionality, it also beefs up the watch in such a strong way that it's almost a different piece, right? It's almost a different line. And therefore, it has a lot of appeal from people who perhaps like the design, but are looking for something, some heavy artillery on the wrist when they buy this kind of luxury watch. So the travel time chronograph is perfect for this. This gray dial variant was, of course, discontinued quite recently, replaced by a classic blue dial, which perhaps has more mainstream appeal, but this is slightly more subdued and maybe more grave and serious in its monotonous, monochromatic presentation. Comes basically as a full set, and the 5990 Line 1A, the Patek Philippe Nautilus travel time chronograph at lot 814 has a pre-auction estimate that is set in the range between 51,300 to 83,300. Thank you, C3D Now, for your upvotes. I really, really appreciate that. Next up is my absolute favorite when it comes to Nautiluses. This is a piece that is kind of the end game, if you ask me, when it comes to all Nautiluses ever created, to be honest. Because the 5740 is just a complete marvel. It's the first time that a perpetual calendar complication has been offered in the Nautilus case, in this porthole-inspired design by Gerard Janta that was first introduced by Patek Philippe in 1976, meaning that we are getting that much closer to its 50th anniversary. One of the values of this watch is, of course, that it is ultra thin, thanks to its micro rotor movement that carries on the legendary legacy of caliber 240. So it is a perfect combination of heft and sleek elegance, because it's rendered entirely in white gold, case and integrated bracelet and all, and in a very balanced visual presentation as well, with the classic blue dial and 3 subdials that represent, or that present rather, the calendrical functions. You have a pointer date at 6 o'clock that wraps itself around the moon phase indicator. At 3 o'clock, you have the day of the week, a subtly sunken register, which has at its center a leap year indicator. And at 9 o'clock, you have the day of the week, which encircles around a day-night indicator, a 24-hour hand. And this particular specimen, of course, comes with its box and papers, meaning that it has its certificate of origin, which is stamped by an Italian dealer, dated November 20th, 2020, instruction manual, other product literature, leather folio to hold that certificate of origin, a setting pin, since it's a perpetual calendar, and of course, its original presentation box, as well as its that box's outer packaging. This absolute top of the line Patek Philippe Nautilus, the 5740 Line 1G, the perpetual calendar with 24-hour leap year and moon phase indication, has a pre-auction estimate of $103,000 to $205,000 US dollars. And again, it would be an interesting story to unfold, because this is an application piece, very hard to get at the point of retail, perhaps even harder than any other version of the Nautilus. And it's priced there at $156,600 in US dollars. So it would be interesting to see how a piece like this would perform at auction. Let's see how lot 815 will be sold in this upcoming Hong Kong watch auction number 19 from Phillips. I'm posting the link again in the chat if you have any special requests, any questions at all. Thank you again for being with me. Please hit the like button. There are, of course, many other ways to contribute to the channel with whatever YouTube puts at your disposal. There are additional links, including to my PayPal, in the video description. But otherwise, as long as you participate and ask a question, I will do my best to respond. Of course, if you send a super chat with that, that's great. We are far away from our goal to extend this auction preview to 4 hours rather than 2. So we have about 45 minutes left, meaning that I can probably discuss about 10 more watches. So you might want to expedite your requests, if nothing else. But otherwise, just sit back and enjoy. We have been discussing the Phillips Hong Kong watch auction number 19. Another personal favorite, as you guys know, from the modern Patek catalog, for me, is this particular combination of annual calendar with the flyback chronograph. The reference 5960, I liken to what the 1518 was in 1941. Probably a little bit of a reach as a claim, but if I were to make my case, I would say that in the same way that in that World War II era, they dared to introduce a serially produced wristwatch that had a perpetual calendar and a hand-wound chronograph on the 10th anniversary of their proprietary annual calendar, they managed once again to produce a watch that was wearable on a daily basis and that provided a contemporary take on that combination of complications. The platinum version was introduced first, and coming from year 2007, of course, it was introduced in the annual calendar was introduced in 1996. 10th anniversary piece was the 5960P, which was the first time that annual calendar complication was combined with what was then the new self-winding chronograph by Patek Philippe, of course, with the added flyback functionality. The bullseye register is here once again, which unclutters the dial. Single register chronograph, where you have at 6 o'clock, something that combines the minute totalizer and the hour counter. And of course, the platinum version was discontinued at 2013. And this early example, since it is pre-2009, also has the Geneva seal as well, meaning that it provides, again, an almost time capsule-like access to what Patek was now about 15 years ago. A great piece. Again, I think all the different metals, all the variations of the 5960 have an appeal to them. The stainless steel versions with the matching, beads of rice kind of bracelet, I think is a great option. The white gold one has a very nice blue dial and those tasti tondi style pushers with the guilloche decoration on top. Wonderful detail with that strap that gives it the air of an aviation chronograph. That's also beautiful. The platinum is I think, again, very, very stately in a way, kind of a monochromatic approach, of course, with that sunburst or starburst gray dial. And of course, within that chronograph register, since this is combined with an annual calendar, there's also a porthole-like indicator for day and night, and a power reserve indicator right under the date window at 12 o'clock. This was lot 818 for a Patek Philippe Platinum Annual Calendar Flyback Chronograph, and the estimated value of the piece is set in the range between 30,100 to 60,300. Lot 830 is an early example of the root beer. This is, of course, the GMT Master reference 1675 in 18 karat yellow gold. The metallic bezel, the aluminum bezel, which has this distinctive color here in a bronze shade. A very nicely and evenly patinated nipple dial in the backdrop, which has lost its gloss but gained lots of charm. And of course, those conical hour markers that are filled with lume give the name to that nipple dial. The piece seems very well preserved with the alpha hands and the small arrow 24-hour hand, as well as that sleek sweep center second sand that distinguish earlier examples. Doesn't come with a bracelet, at least not this particular example as it's presented at lot 830. This is a piece that's roughly from 1963, and it has a pre-auction estimate that is set in the range between $19,200 to $29,500 in US dollars. Thank you, Bezels. Here's one for a viewer's choice lot. Basil, that's very generous of you, and that helps me also locate. This is the first and only super chat of the night so far, so I appreciate it even more. And ABNS 92 had requested 832, which is in a way a variation on the theme, but a very different piece indeed. This is the Certi or Certi version of what we were looking at earlier, and of course from a very different era. About 3 decades separates the gold GMT Master in lot 830 and the gold GMT Master 2 here in lot 832. This is a reference 16718, and it has a champagne dial that is set with diamonds, brilliant diamonds, 8 of them, and rubies, 2 baguette cuts and 1 triangle cut at 12 o'clock for the hour markers. It has, in this case, a matching oyster bracelet in 18 karat yellow gold, as well as a lovely faded bronze 24-hour bezel, which continues that root beer theme, even beyond the absence of a brown/root beer dial. Just as you may be familiar with the so-called Certi or Certi dials for submariners in two-tone or full gold. Here you have a GMT Master 2 that has stones set. Serti means, after all, jam set, practically in French, set with stones for hour markers. In Submariners, a lot of times that's diamonds in combination with sapphire. Here, it's diamonds in combination with rubies. Thank you so much, Basil. This piece seems to be in a very decent condition. It's watch only, of course, but you get a 16-7-18 on the bracelet, which is not a bad package whatsoever. At lot 832, this GMT Master 2 has an estimated value that's set between 14,100 to 29,500 in US dollars. Just to change gears a little bit, I'm going to go back to Rolex almost immediately. As you have seen, we are looking at another FP Jean in a relatively popular combination. I'm a big fan of their Havana dial, perhaps a bigger fan of the Havana dial over that chrome blue or ink blue dial of the Chronomètre Bleu. This is dial made in a shade of brown that I guess harkens to those beautiful wrappers of Cuban cigars. Here in combination with a 40 millimeter platinum case. I really like them with the pink gold case, the Havana dials with the pink gold case. I think it really enhances the warmth of the watch overall, makes it, I think, much more captivating. But here too, perhaps there's a little bit of contrast that is attractive and interesting in its own way. This is the Octa Automatique Réserve de Marche, meaning that it's a self-winding watch with that famous caliber 1300s, 5-day power reserve, which is indicated at around 9 o'clock on the dial. Offset small seconds is right around 6 o'clock, and there's a 2-digit date indicator or 2-disc date indicator, a big date indicator as it were, again, right between 11 and 12 o'clock. Very cool piece. Again, basically arriving with its set of box and papers. Here's a peek at the self-winding movement, which is rendered in 18 karat pink gold. I also like when that pink gold movement matches the pink gold case as well, but it's not an absolute must, of course. But I think overall, that's Havana dial, pink gold case, pink gold movement provides a really compelling package. And as you can see, between the Toki auction and this, it's a very different vibe, right? You know, it's almost two different collecting cultures, right? Here, it's all about things that are pristine and shiny and recognizable, big name brands in perhaps their most iconic, aspirational, and desirable configurations. Whereas in Toki, which is the auction that ended earlier today, where we had a small window onto a very different collecting culture with its own makers, of course, but with very unique limited editions and with very specific, you might even say minimalist tastes. Right now, we're looking at Hong Kong Watch Auction 19 by Phillips Hong Kong, lot 836, which is an FP Jean Octa Automatique Réserve de Marche with the Havana dial, with a platinum case. Pre-auction estimate values the watch in the range between 51,300 to 76,900 in US dollars. We are going to 834, the so-called John Mayer Daytona. This is the piece that John Mayer identified, presented alongside its white gold, blue dialed counterpart in the second installment of his talking watches for Hodinkee. And he emphasized specifically that this was a watch that came out in 2016 concurrently with the Daytonas that had ceramic tachymeter bezels. And it kind of got lost in that excitement, perhaps, about those stainless steel aspirational pieces. And somehow, I guess, the combination of yellow, gold, and green, as John Mayer predicted, and as John Mayer really asserted, one should say, because he was then really on the upsurge of his arc as an influencer, this became one of the most desirable variations of the Daytona, perhaps the most desirable until Rolex came up with that Le Mans Centennial edition of the Daytona, which presents a very unique take on what was perhaps an older theme, but that's a different discussion altogether. This piece, the reference 116508, has been discontinued as of 2023. And it's for that reason, perhaps, over time, possibly quite desirable as a collectible watch. I think still goes for crazy prices. It might settle down eventually, but in a setting like this, in an auction like this, there's a chance that it might go for a pretty high price point. At any rate, lot 834 for a John Mayer Daytona is already valued in the range between 51,300 to 70,500 in US dollars. Ryan Joffrey says, was good to see Roman on JJ's, but couldn't miss YB. Thank you. I'm very honored by even that juxtaposition. But again, it's every channel, every platform has its place. You guys know that one of my main principles on this channel is that I don't host dealers for no particular reason or occasion, right? Unless there is something on which they can provide their specific expertise. I try not to mess with different gray market dealers because I really think that it dilutes the content to begin with, at least in terms of the lines that I've drawn for myself. But more importantly, I think it takes away from the potential of objective takes that only serves one master, and that's the audience. That's what I aspire to on this channel. So on that note, by the way, I wanted to talk about something, but I guess this is a subject that I will open up when I have at least one interlocutor. But I had some interesting people contact me very recently, And it was an opportunity, quote unquote, that I turned down almost immediately for the same reason, right? You know, you can't offer me any kind of money or any kind of exposure to take me away from the path that I set for myself on this channel, which is to create a platform that is at the behest of its audience, right? Only one master, and that's the passion for horology, that's the knowledge of wristwatches, and that's the ability to serve you in the most objective, uncontaminated way as possible. And that goes for all the industry brands, all the watch strap companies, all the gray market dealers, and whatever else, right? No such sponsorship will ever dilute a channel like this. Lot 841. We're looking at, again, one of the most appealing versions and variations of the Royal Oak, in my book, at least. Ryan Hoffrey, thank you so much. $199. Forget egos. You're an appreciated watch maestro, YB. I don't know what you mean by ego. I mean, look, I have an ego, that there's no doubt about that. And I never denied that. And I think anyone who denies that they have an ego among people who appear on live streams, much less host them, is an absolute fool. Because you cannot do something like this if you don't have an ego, if you don't have a sense of self, and you will certainly not chase after it day after day, week after week, if you don't have, again, an ego, period. So there's nothing wrong with having an ego and being aware of it and checking it when it's necessary. And I'm fine with both. I'm fine with having an ego, and I'm fine with checking my ego. I just don't get involved in unnecessary drama. So that's been my heading for the longest time, and I don't think it will change. Now, the classic Audemars Piguet perpetual calendar is offered in dimensions that are very close to the original jumbo, extra thin, so to speak, 39 millimeter case. And for this particular reference, which is the 25820 ST, the watch is only 10 millimeters thick. So for the kind of complication it offers, here a perpetual calendar with a moon phase and leap year indicator, it's, I think, an incredible package. You have the moon phase indicator set at 6 o'clock and at 12 o'clock. Within the indicator for months, you have a leap year indicator, pointer date at 3 o'clock, and day of the week at 9 o'clock. As it happens, this particular piece also has a blue dial that is associated with the French painter Yves Klein, and the shade of blue that he has, in fact, patented, IKB, as they sometimes call it, international Klein blue. Another neo-vintage marvel, you might say, by AP. This piece comes from around year 2001, and it actually comes with a digital extract that confirms its date of register for April 10, 2001, and also the color of the dial as it originally left the manufacturer, I hope. We can see it right here. I believe the last two refer to the Yves Klein blue. 04 should be the codes for this particular shade of blue. I can very quickly double check that. Just give me 1 second. But off the top of my mind, that's what I remember for the Yves Klein blue. Let's see. I'm actually not sure what the 04 refers to in this case. Because as I'm given to understand that it can vary by reference. So that's something that needs to be double checked, perhaps, with the manufacturer. But one would hope, but one never knows, that they can actually stand by that archival extract, which is, by the way, digital. And here is the movement that builds on the base of the same extra thin caliber, same extra thin movement that has powered up until 2022 the Royal Oak Jumbo through generations. Open worked oscillating weight that puts the initials of the founding families in Gothic font into sharp relief with the supplemental 21 carats weight attached to that rotor. This is lot 841 for an AP Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar in stainless steel, 25820 ST with an Yves Klein blue dial. And the estimated value of the watch is set in the range between 71,800 to 144,000 in US dollars. Thank you for being here. Please hit the like button. I really appreciate your presence and support. If nothing else, again, for you to serve as a mouthpiece for this channel that, again, has nothing else but its audience, nothing else but the people who watch it, who listen to it. It always is the most important aspect. And Van Lux, it's lovely to see you as well. ABNS 92 was saying Toki had exciting offerings compared to this. I think so too. Much more unique, for sure. Yeah, it's this is more of a usual suspects kind of thing, like Royal Oak Jumbo 15202 full set with an estimate that puts it between 38,500 to 64,100, kind of mid-series from around 2017. There's a Tiffany stamped pink gold Nautilus Jumbo 5711R with that gradient brown dial of the classic rib design. retailed and co-signed by Tiffany at 6 o'clock. Again, full sets, the certificate of origin properly stamped by Tiffany and Company in Beverly Hills, which is something you won't see for, you won't see again anytime soon, because the Patek sales are, I think, now handled basically exclusively through the New York flagship. As far as I know, in any other Tiffany branches that I've visited, they have even removed the internal displays and internal boutiques for Patek from branches that they previously previously had this. And this is lot 842, which has an estimated value of 141,000 to 244,000 in US dollars before the auction, before the hammer. I have maybe 15 more minutes, so I'm gonna try to perhaps speed through a few more pieces. I'll return tomorrow at any rate. You know, it doesn't matter whether we reach the super chat goal or anything tonight. Tomorrow I can do another 2-hour show. St. Peter, 199. International Klein Blue for the win. Thank God it's Friday. I hope you mean the Glorilla song. Tim Wright says, Happy Thanksgiving. Is that the real Tim Wright? It's very interesting. He really tries. You know, you got to give it to the guy. He really tries, even though he knows that I have no, how to put it, no sympathy for him. Let's stop right there without giving him the kind of attention that he is clearly desperate for. We're looking at the Phillips Hong Kong watch auction number 19, and an example of one of my favorite watches of all time. This is a Lange one with a moon phase indicator that is subtly integrated into the subdial for the seconds without interrupting the larger harmony, the order that this asymmetric dial design finds in its chaos. I think the black dial combines really well with the platinum case. Of course, there are versions of such combination that even accentuate this contrast using black date wheels rather than white, the so-called Darth versions of the classic Lange one. But of course, this is a little different, perhaps better legibility for that. I don't quite know, but this one is perhaps also just as aesthetically pleasing, since it's a very recent example. Not only you will find an instantaneous grand dates expression, which Patek just caught up with their new release, but also a beautiful moon phase indicator that not only shows, of course, the phases of the moon over the lunar month, so to speak, but also serves as a day-night indicator because it consists of two superimposed disks, one of which makes a 24-hour revolution and has interchangeably either a blue sky or a midnight blue sky backdrop, hence also serving as this handy 24-hour indicator. I will never shake your hand. I don't have a beef with you, but because your platform long harbored known anti-Semites, we can never be friends. I'm not interested in making friends with you. I'm absolutely not interested in your well wishes either. Always feel free to super chat. I'll happily take your money on this public platform, but you will never, ever get close to me physically or virtually. I hope you know that. And it makes you look very desperate for you to even try. It's quite sad, actually. This is, again, as you see, a nice full set example. And this is, by the way, the day backdrop for the moon phase. You can see that from the shade of the blue. Once acquired, apparently, from the Geneva showroom for Erlang und Söhne. Of course, that distinctive pusher at roughly 10 o'clock for a quick correction of the date. And the 3/4 backplate rendered in that particular alloy of nickel, copper, and zinc, which they call German silver, and which itself, in fact, over time develops a very unique patina, a lot of character to this watch, inside and out. And of course, I would be remiss not to say anything about the freehand engraved balance cock, the swan neck regulator, the heat blued screws, as well as the rubies that are set into mirror polished chaton. This is lot 854 for a reference, 192029 for an Erlang und Söhne Langewan moon phase. Pre-auction estimate sets the value of the watch in the range between 15,400 to 30,800 in US dollars. Another watch that I really like, maybe not a particular dial color that I enjoy, but I've always loved this cobblestone style tapisserie dial. Of course, it has a very specific name that they call tapisserie évolutive, I believe. It has this appearance of the pattern of the dial exploding out from the tourbillon cage. This is a flying tourbillon, as it were, which means that the revolution of the tourbillon can be observed without the impediment of a bridge. And of course, it being a 1-minute tourbillon, you can think of it as, in the same way, counting the seconds as a kind of fancy second subdial as well. This particular version has kind of light green dial. It is rendered in titanium, a 41 millimeter case. And it was a limited edition of 50 pieces. And the reference number is 26534 titanium, or TI rather. Here's a look on the case back, which has the inscriptions specifically for that limited edition. A style that I appreciate a great deal, maybe not with the best style color, at least in my opinion. This is lot 861 for an AP Royal Oak Flying Tourbillon in a 41 millimeter titanium case, and its matching integrated bracelets of a limited edition of 50 pieces. And the estimated value of the watch is set in the range between 154,000 to 308,000 in US dollars. Now I have about 3 minutes, but I will try to stretch myself thin and talk about two pieces. One goes to my friend, Aussie expat, because it is a platinum Daytona. It is a Platona with baguette cut diamonds as its hour markers. This is the immediately preceding generation, 116506. There's a complement, or there's a counterpart to this in the current line, 126506. But the Platinum Daytona was, for the first time, introduced in serial production to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the model, launched in Baselworld 2013. And it's basically top of the line, using, of course, the ice blue dial in this case, and combining it with these premium baguette cut markers. The new series has outer rings that match the brown or maroon shade of the ceramic bezel. I kind of like the distinction and the full sparkle of this version, to be honest. But I mean, a Platinum Daytona, you know, who can really argue with that except my friend Aussie expat? Of course, as always, please sign up to his channel at Aussie expat watches on YouTube. But I will drop the link as well. He is, as you guys know, a long-standing contributor to this channel, and a great friend who has, in a puzzling way, turned down this watch and bought a yellow gold version to complement, of course, Ms. Aussie Expat's pink gold piece. And I think it's a great pair. They're a great pair, just like the beautiful Daytonas they wear. But joking aside, this for me in many ways is the stuff that so many dreams are made of. Not mine exactly, but who can say no to such a masterpiece? The reference 116506, the Platinum Daytona that was first introduced on the 50th anniversary of the model, now replaced by the 126506. And this is a new old stock version of the one that has a pure ice blue dial complemented by baguette cut diamond hour markers. The pre-auction estimate puts the value of the watch in the range between 76,900 to 128,000 in US dollars. That was lot 881. So let's have one more watch. By the way, this comes with an extra dial as well that doesn't have the diamond markers, which I think adds to the intrigue, if not necessarily the value of the piece. But let's have one more watch. Please feel free to hit the like button. Leave a comment once the live stream ends. And if you want to contribute to the channel, feel free to squeeze in a super chat or a last-minute request at the very end. But most importantly, the fact that you have been here, the fact that you have already contributed means a great deal. And today we had super chats by Bezos Bezos, Ryan Hoffrey, St. Peter, and Tim Wright. We have an example of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak chronograph in white gold. Those square markers initially indicated the precious metal construction of the case for these chronographs. And we have a Salomon dial, as we like to say in this channel, with a Grand Tapisserie pattern. So that waffle dial that has perhaps bigger squares than the classic Petite Tapisserie, which is a little more subtle. As always, I think a Salomon dial has a great interplay with a white metal case. So hard not to like this particular combination either. This example is quite well preserved from right around the turn into the new millennium, bought first in October 2000 and serviced by Bukhara in 2019, apparently. Comes with the service guarantee as well as the invoice for that. An archival extract for the watch from AP also comes with the package. As with any precious metal Royal Oak, this watch has a great heft. And it's incidentally a very early example in the series, 005. I guess that in and of itself has a certain attraction. But overall, I think aesthetically, the watch is really appealing if you are looking for a very unique kind of Royal Oak chronograph in a version, in a color, in a combination that you can't find in the catalog today. That's lot 893 for an AP Royal Oak chronograph from right around year 2000 in the classic 39 millimeter case size. and salmon dial with a white gold case and integrated bracelet. The pre-auction estimate sets the value of the watch between $32,100 to $64,100 in US dollars. Thank you again for being with me. I came to the end of the allotted time for myself tonight. Please don't forget to hit the like button at the end of the broadcast. Never a dull day at the Late Show, as you guys know. Again, all sorts of intrigue and interesting developments, but we will stay tuned and I will stay with you. As always, I serve only a single master, and that master is you, my audience. I'm always very happy to actually talk about watches and not much of anything else, unless people come looking for trouble. We will continue our coverage of the Phillips Hong Kong Watch Auction 19 tomorrow. I need to eat my dinner now and re-energize myself, but I already feel in a better shape than I started this live stream with. Thanks to my audience. Thanks to you. Thank you again for all of you who have asked the question, interacted with others in the chat, who have made other contributions in the super chat and otherwise. Please leave a comment after the live stream ends. But most importantly, stay tuned, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. I'll most certainly catch you in the next one. Bye.